Everyone, from the Miller Tree Inn Bed and Breakfast in Forks, Washington. Some of you may have heard of Forks before. It was the town that Stephanie Meyer used in the books and the movie series Twilight. And Stephanie Myers, when she was doing her research to write the books, said she wanted to find the darkest and wettest spot in the United States. And guess what? It's Forks, Washington, and it's playing true to that today because it's raining outside. This is in the northwest part of the state of Washington, in the Olympic National Forest. And I was going to shoot this today from the Hoh Rainforest. The Hoh Rainforest is one of the only true rainforests in the continental United States, but it's raining. So imagine that. The Hoh Rainforest, by the way, gets about 220 inches of rain a year. 220 inches of rain a year. So be thankful you are where you are today. I was talking to my kids who live back in Dallas, and they said it's going to be 92 today in Dallas. So I guess I'll just have to live with this. Game day here in Washington State. Seahawks lost their first game. We're holding out hope, but I don't know. Green Bay Packers and Lambeau Field, not an easy place to play. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed going forward. So let's do Lesson 4 review and Lesson 5 preview this week as we continue to talk about problem solving and critical thinking. The first discussion question this week dealt with fact or opinion or better versus best. And this is one of my favorite ones. And the reason being is because today, I think I mentioned this, I'm not on Facebook anymore. And the reason I'm not is because there's so many people who just throw crap out there, to be real honest with you. And people will forward it as if it's fact. And today people think that if their opinion is given, then that's the way that it should be. I mean, someone may say, I believe the earth is flat. Well, it's not. It's round. But if you believe it's flat and you say, I believe it's flat and I don't care, that may be a stark example. But today, certainly facts are in short supply. Opinions are in a abundance today. So not only in research, but in other types of things. So this is why I really try and focus on fact versus opinion. Make sure that you begin to couch some of the things that you say in your research writing. Don't say a will or always or things like that. Use words like may or could or things that will help provide some degree of objectivity as you go forward in that discussion. The other discussion dealt with two truths. Truth 28 talked about making wrong decisions better than no decision at all. And Truth 29 talked about getting 80% of all you need and then acting on it. And so I was just interested to see what you thought about those because, there are a lot of people, if you take the first one that says make the wrong decision, it's better than no decision at all. I mean, that on the surface may be, you look at it and go, oh, that's foolish. However, if you make the wrong decision and you're able to learn something from that decision and then turn around and begin moving, you may have people who just haven't made any decision yet and they're just sitting there spinning their wheels. So while you made a wrong decision, but then you've corrected that wrong decision, you may be further ahead than someone who made no decision at all. And then get 80% of all the information and then act. I think, that goes back to the book Analysis Paralysis and looking at those things and saying, at some point in time, we have to act. And that's one of the key things as a leader going forward is to know when to say, okay, we have enough to make a good critical decision or to turn critical thinking into a strategic decision to go forward. So, again, I appreciate the discussions on those. Those were kind of all over the map, but those are really good discussions to have. And then the assignment this week talked about bias. And bias happens all over the place. I mean, it happens in your life, happens in your work, it happens in church as you go forward. And so I just want everyone to fully understand that you have a bias towards something in everything that you do. I mean, you bring those biases forward. And if there's one key message I'd like to get out of this is for you to clearly understand what your biases are. Because if you don't clearly understand what your biases are, then your actions aren't going to be representative going forward. Now, you may continue to make the same types of decisions, but at least you're doing so knowing your predispositions that you have in that area. We're going to talk in lesson 7 about worldview, and you see that a lot in research today. Cresswell's worldview. It's one of the supplemental readings. But then there are a lot of worldview discussions that happen at church and different areas like that. And so those are another place where you have bias going forward. Now, I do want you to understand that the word bias is normally used with a negative connotation. And so that's not always the case. I mean, since everyone has a particular bias, that doesn't have to mean that, oh, bad, 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 bad. I mean, so think about those things too as you go forward. Okay, so that's lesson 4. Lesson 5 begins to talk about, in critical thinking and problem solving, how important it is to assess the audience. Now, this is one of those areas that, since my background is in corporate sales and marketing, we used to be really spot on, or tried to be spot on these, because when you would go try to sell someone or to convince somebody to do something they may not have wanted to do in the first place, part of the success on that is how well you were able to assess the audience. And so whenever you're faced with problems in whatever front, whether it's, again, church, maybe you have a child in school and it's a school issue, your own children, work, or whatever, being able to properly assess the audience, and that means assessing their biases, assessing a lot of other things too, is very important. And so you want to talk about that today, to draw the connection between how important it is to assess the audience and the problem. And the one thing that I want to make sure that you take a look at too is look at the audience down the line too, because in senior level management, if you're there now or if you're moving into those areas, you not only have to look at the people who are directly impacted by what you decide to do to address a problem, but also those down the road. And think about this, an ominous story. We're going to talk a little bit later about organizational impacts. And so the decision that the military made, the decision that the pastor made, the decision that the hospital made, all those things had a direct impact on some people, but the decisions they made had implications for people down the road that they weren't even considering, or perhaps they were. But what I want to get you to look at is not just the direct impact on those people, but look at the impact that your decision is, your problem solution is on those people down the road, and not just the ones. Did I beat that horse dead enough? I think so. That's the first discussion board. The second one really talks about a video from a guy who wrote an incredible book. And I think if you take the negotiating skills course here in the MSOM program, you'll probably talk about this again, but it's the walk from no to yes. And the video is really an interesting one where it takes a problem. It's a Middle Eastern problem. I mean, the Arabs and the Palestinians and the Israelis, and begins to talk about how to walk from no to yes, or how to develop those types of connections. And so what I really want you to do on this one is to look at creative ways to deal with conflict. And conflict is one of the biggest problems you're going to face. I mean, as a manager, you're going to have two people who just don't like each other. You're going to have two people who have two different opinions on different things going forward. Maybe you and a co-worker, like me and the head of marketing. The head of sales and the head of marketing sometimes just did this all the time. And so one of the key things is to fully understand that audience, that may be an audience of one, maybe an audience of many, but to try and use some of those creative techniques that are present in this video on the walk from no to yes that may help you in the future. And then the assignment this week really talks about empathy and sincerity. And this is a real challenge for me, I'll be honest with you. If you look at, we talked about Strength Finders a little while ago, the Marcus Buckingham stuff. And my top 5 strengths are strategic, futuristic, achiever, competitive, and relator. Unfortunately, on the bottom of that list, empathy. Okay? And so this is something that I put in here, probably selfishly just for me. And maybe some of you, I think a lot of hard charging folks have some of the same similar type of issues. But the reading this week talked about empathy plus sincerity equals persuasion. Think about that for a second. Think about how empathy, when you add to it sincerity, can persuade people, can help solve problems. And so um, I'm going to be really interested to see what you come up with on these because many of them I'm hoping that I'm going to a group of psychiatrists here, and you're my psychiatrist as we go through this one. So please don't shoot me here for having something that may be an issue for me and not for you. But I think everyone knows individuals like that, so perhaps it will be an effective way of looking at problem solving. All right. Well, the rain's starting to come down even harder here today, and so hope you have a great week going forward. We have week 5, 6, and 7, 3 more weeks left until we're finished. If you need me, make sure you reach out. I'm going to be here, gosh, for a couple of weeks, a couple more weeks. Hope the rain stops. But in the meantime, have a great day. Talk with you soon.